Respected Vice Chancellor Sri Kuldeep Chand Agnihotri ji, Chair Professor Dr. Arun Kumar ji, Organizing Secretary of this lecture series, Dr. Pramod Saini ji, and other teachers, students, and others. I'm sorry that I could not speak in your beautiful Hindi language because I am still in the learning process of that beautiful language. So kindly excuse me for placing the views, placing the ideas in English. Today, the Deen Dayal chair of the university has asked me to present the views on Deen Dayal ji and Dattopant Thegudi ji. These two are very important, great visionaries who had in fact placed before us a great vision which will work as an alternate to two paradigms that exist or existed in the global scenario. We know that during 1990s, during 1990s, communism fell all over the world and capitalism became the only alternate paradigm through which the global economics, global vision, everything can pass through. Now, Deen Dayal ji and Dattopant ji both had in-depth studied these two paradigms, communism as well as capitalism. But the period in which they lived, that is very important. Deen Dayal ji lived in a period of when India was passing through a Russian model of socialism. So he had to work on that paradigm and he had to answer to many questions that was raised during that period on that Nehruvian socialism. But Dattopant ji, after 1990s, he has to face a sudden turn of events. Suddenly on a fine morning, India's economy turned to another direction. India became a globalized economy. LPG reforms became the basis of India's economic reforms. So we can say that Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya has made the basis of the paradigm, and that was in the context of that socialist period. And Dattopant ji has to convert that paradigm into an answer to the capitalist period. So this can be broadly the difference between Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya and Dattopant ji's thoughts. Now, when we look at Deen Dayal ji's thoughts, his vision is named as integral human philosophy. Previously, it was named as integral humanism, but he was opposed to ism, so it is not proper to call it as humanism. So human philosophy. मानववाद ये गलत है, इसलिए मानव दर्शन. That was the name given. He believed that a human body, human personality has four levels: the body, the mind, the intellect, and the soul. So these are the four levels. These are all integrated into a human personality. So all these have to be taken together when we think of anything regarding a human being. But in the West, it was just the opposite. Everything was thought in a compartmentalized way. So they thought, many people thought of an economic man. Many people thought about the religious man. They rejected the other thing. Many scholars thought about the materialistic man, and they rejected the other things. So it was compartmentalized view of human being, human society, nation, even regarding the world scenario was thought in that fashion. So there was conflict between all these views, and it created conflict in the society also. So Deenadayalji said every thought should be an integral part of the whole holistic thought. So he said integral humanism means everything related to man should be integrated to a holistic thought. Then he placed before us three ideas: Prakriti, Vikriti, and Sanskriti. The Prakriti has to be molded to Sanskriti. Dharma plays a constitute should be Dohanam, milking of the nature. Just like we are milking a cow, we feed the cow, we love the cow, but for getting milk, we will milk the cow. So just like we should love the nature and we should treat the nature as a mother. So Mother Earth concept has been laid down by our forefathers. So we have to, like milking the cow, we have to look at the nature. Similarly, he has mentioned how the Westerners looked at some strange ideas that has developed in India. For we people who are living in India, it's not a strange thing. But for the Westerners, they thought it miraculous. They thought how a country like India, which is so diverse, every area has got a religious diversity, food diversity, but it's all connected through a common culture. So that type of a different types of people living, languages, etc. How India could reconcile all these together in a common thread. That was a miraculous thing, because in the West, all these things are mutually conflicting. For example, they considered language as the basis of nation. So people who talk a particular language, they were considered as a different category, different nation. But in India, everywhere you will find a different language. Still, all these people who talk different languages, all these are all connected into a one nation. During the Bhakti movement, the same Ramayana was written in all the languages at the same time. That means the entire nation was aroused, or it was connected through a Ramayana culture manifested in different languages. So that was also against the Western theory of language as the basis of nation. Similarly, he said nation is an organic concept. Nation is an organic concept and it has got a soul. He named it as Chiti. Chiti is the Atma. It is the Asmita of that identity of a nation. If that national Chiti is suppressed, that will create aberration in the society. So the best way of progressing a nation is arouse that Chiti. That is our dharma, he said. And he said there are many institutions in the society that is meant for arousing this Chiti. And India has a difference with other countries in the lawmaking process. In West, the laws are made by the king. It is the arbitrary commands of rulers which became law of the land. But in India, the laws were made by rishis. The rishis who sat in a separate place, mostly in a remote forest or a village, and they, from sitting there, they looked at the society and they formulated the laws. So rishi made laws. That is a peculiarity of Indian society. Similarly, on the concept of secularism, Deenadayalji said in the West, the word secularism originated in a European historical context. There it was against the church, this concept of secularism arose, and then it was anti-religious. Or as a compromise, the meaning was given as neutral to religion. But in India, we cannot be anti-religious or neutral to religion. We respect all religions equally. So Sarvapantha Samadha, that is our concept. We respect equal respect to all religion. So the Western concept of secularism doesn't fit into this type of concept. He's explained. Similarly, he said the society is self-born as per Indian concept. So the society is born like an organic being, and so it has got all the characteristics of a organic being. But in the West, A society is an artificial creation. It is formed through social contract theory. So people coming to a contract, and thus society was formed. Similarly, he he was against consumerism. Consumerism was a basic feature of Western society. Everybody wanted to have maximum material gains. That was the basis of GDP. That was the basis of standard of living. Everything that became the basis. But in India, we were not happy with that consumerism. We want to consume things. Minimum consumption was our concept. That doesn't mean that we are against material needs of the people. Artha and Kama were both very important in human life, but it should be based on dharma, and it should move towards achieving the goal of moksha. So these Chaturvida Purusharthas are architected in such a way that these things should be in that fashion. Similarly, the concept of state differed widely with the Indian concept and Western concept. State is a watchman in India. It was only one of the several institutions. It doesn't have such a very highly glorified position in Indian society. That is why Dr. Ambedkar, while he was discussing about Indian Constitution in the Constituent Assembly, he said there were powerful monarchies in Delhi during the period of after the foreign invasion, but even during the powerful monarchies ruling in Delhi, our villages were not at all worried about that thing. They were all in a different, they were all carrying on their own activities as normal without caring that thing. The panchayat system was very much strong here. So state didn't play a important role or that much role as it played in the Western society. In Western society, everything depended on state. So if there is a change in the ruler, the social direction also will change. That didn't happen in India. People considered dharma above state. So everything was directed, guided by dharma. Dharmena eva praja sarvam, rakshanthisma parasparam. People protected each other. Even today, that is the system in our Indian villages. So that was totally different with the Western system. Then regarding the functioning of democracy, actually democracy has originated in India. The Vedic Sabha and Samiti, they were the strong beginning of democracy in the world. But Indian democracy differed with Western democracy, Deen Dayalji said. What is the difference? In Indian democracy, we respected unanimous view of all the people sitting there. But in Western democracy, just a majority is sufficient to for the democracy to move forward. So there was oppression of minority people. That was there in every society. But in India, it was a unanimous view that will be respected by everybody. So when you look at the panchayat system functioning in India, it was mostly based on the unanimous view. Similarly, Deen Dayalji talked about who is to share the wealth, who should share the profits. In the Western capitalism, it is the individuals who had more efficiency, more capacity. They will share the maximum profit. They will share the profits. That is why most of the wealth in the world is shared by a small portion of wealthy people. In communism, it is in the hands of the state. But for India, the wealth, profit, everything is shared by the society in common. Kaudilya mentions about this. The property is shared by the society in guild system. That was the peculiarity. Similarly, Deen Dayalji talks about technology. Technology should be for a social goal. A social goal should be given to technology. Otherwise, it will be dangerous to the society. In short, at the end of his narration about integral human philosophy, he says the nutshell of economic policy, it is Swadeshi plus decentralization. We have the decentralized system of political system, that is panchayat, decentralized system of economic, that is in the village level, village self-sufficiency. In the same way, almost all institution in India, you can see it's all mostly decentralized. So Swadeshi plus decentralization, that should be the fundamental basis of our economic policy. So these were broadly the thoughts that Deen Dayal ji has placed before us in his integral human philosophy. Integral human philosophy is not a invention by Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya. It is what is said by most of our great people throughout history. Right from the beginning, they have mentioned about all these principles according to different times. The terminology, the presentation may be different. So Deen Dayal ji only made it in a nutshell, in a small framework. He brought everything. That was his peculiarity. That is why many Westerners, they wonder how India could manage to be a continuous society from Vedic times till this day. When we talk about the two paradigms, communism and capitalism, communism could not even survive 100 years. After Russian October Revolution, it could not complete 100 years. Before that, it fell down. Capitalism began about 300 years back. So after 300 years, it is also in a crisis. After the global financial crisis of 2008, everybody feels it is in a crisis. But there is one paradigm that was subsisting in India for the last 5,000 years, that has been brought to a nutshell by Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya. Now Dattopant took this Deen Dayal ji's ideas to the capitalist new paradigm which has engulfed Indian economy. Dattopant mostly he talked about economics, but he also talked about law, society, sociology, and many other aspects also in the light of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyaya's philosophy. Dattopant said, little in an aggressive way, he said, the final phase of ideological warfare has arrived. Now every Indian citizen has a duty to tell to the world that this is the paradigm that is going to be the savior of future world. So we have to be aggressively campaign this paradigm to the external world. But countries like America, Europe, etc., they put forward a particular idea to the world that there is no alternate to capitalism. TINA, there is no alternate, TINA is the word used. This TINA has been in the minds of even our Indian intellectuals. They feel there is no alternate to capitalism. So everybody has to carry capitalism with them in all their economic thoughts, in all their day-to-day life. It is inevitable. That is what they feel. That is not correct. There, Dattopant quotes the Toynbee's views. Toynbee has studied the entire world history. He is a famous historian, and he finally arrived at a conclusion that a history that has got a Western beginning will definitely have a Indian end. Dattopant was like a Rishi, and he was raised to the level of a Krantadarshi. During 1980s, he said that communism will not survive in the world within the next 10 years. That prediction has come true. Within 10 years, communism fell down. Same way, you will find in the 1995 edition of Third Way. Third Way is his famous book about economics and other things. In that book, he has said that this globalization also will meet its end. The capitalism is in a crisis, so it will not go beyond 2010. Only thing is that the demise of capitalism is only delayed. It is delayed because it finds new ways to meet the new maladies. So that way it will survive, but it will not go beyond 2010. That also came to be true when after the 2008 global financial crisis, many world-known personalities said that is the demise of capitalism. That was the word they used. That is the demise of capitalism. Thus, Dattophanji was a Krantadarshi. His prediction on communism as well as capitalism has come true. And then they gave a very important duty to all of us. He said, now it is the that the Indian way, the Hindu way is the only way now remaining. We have to project it to the whole world. That is our duty. So every research, every thought process, discussion should always, whenever there is a capitalist idea or something related to economics comes, definitely it should think in terms of the Tobinji's and Dindayaji's ideas. There should be a India-specific perception, India-specific thought should be given to every aspect of our social life. That is what Dattophanji has said. Dattophanji, while placing his views, he said, we should have clarity on ideas. Voltaire has said, define your terms before debate. For example, he said, ism is like a religion. It's a closed framework. So we should not call anything as ism. So Hinduism, that is a wrong term. It should be Hindutva. Then only it will reflect the Indian idea. Hindutva, when you say Hindutva, then it cannot be a religion. It can be a package of religions. It can be a bundle of religions. It is like a bundle of beautiful flowers packed together. So that way, he has said Hinduism is wrong, Hindutva is the correct word. Similarly, there are, when you go to Hindu philosophy, Maya, Mithya, these are all translated as illusion. He said that is not correct. Maximum you can say delusion, a new word that can be used for that. Similarly, secularism, secular, that word also you cannot translate this as Sarvapanta Samadhar. These concepts cannot be related to secularism. So, in that way, he discusses about many ideas. On capitalism, he said, the fundamental of capitalism is flawed. He quotes Lionel Robbins. Lionel Robbins defines capitalism in terms of unlimited wants and relative scarcity of resources. Lionel Robbins also said, it is not the job of economics or economists to teach ethics. Ethics has nothing to do with economics. So he kept ethics also away from business, economics, etc. This is also sharply in contrast with Indian idea. So we have to say that ethics has to be definitely clubbed with economics. That is our idea. Similarly, Dattophanji analyzed capitalism and he narrated the main drawbacks, the flaws of capitalism as it is based on exploitation. Without exploitation, capitalism cannot survive. It is based on a market-centric philosophy. Everything is market-oriented. It is based on consumerism. Volume in which you can increase consumerist greed of the people, then only capitalism can survive. Similarly, capitalism believes in monopoly. Monopoly means everything is concentrated in a few hands. Similarly, it believes in individualism. They cannot say that everybody has to be equally distributed. That's against them. Similarly, they believe in imperialism, a capitalist global empire. It is consisted of multinational companies, international agencies, rating agencies, capitalist countries. All these people come together and build up an empire, capitalist empire. So that is how they conquer many societies. Similarly, inequality is also a feature of capitalism. So all these should be rejected. Then he said, for the purpose of sustaining capitalism, there are many devices created by monopoly capitalism. He mentioned a long list: patents, brands, copyrights, trade names, licenses, quotas, protective tariff, cartels. That way he mentions many things. For capitalists, even education is a big business. Education is called a knowledge industry, whereas in India, it is a service. The concept of Gurukula, which is not at all, it is totally against this modern concept. Similarly, it creates an unbalanced growth that we are experiencing right now. Then it also faces a big challenge to Indian society. Everything is service oriented in Indian society. But in capitalism, it is profit motivated. We believe in decentralized production and distribution, whereas capitalism, everything is monopolized, centralized. So this is against Indian concept. We believe the benefit of the last person in the society. That is Antyodaya. That is a concept of the last person should be benefited. That is our concept. So Sarvodaya. He says about classical economics. Classical economics finds only two types of people. One is profit-making capitalist, and the other is wage employment. These are the two categories. Basing on these two things, Karl Marx also formulated his class theory. In India also, these things are very discussed by our ancient scholars. Like in Shukranidhi, you will find discussion about wage employment, self-employment, etc. How do you share surplus value? In capitalist society, it is individuals who share it, and in communism, it is the state. And for the Tobanji said, it should be shared by the society. Society is a important party in all these discussions. So even in collective bargaining, that society has to be a party. That is what he insisted. He said so, collective bargaining is not an Indian concept. It is against Indian values. In collective bargaining, what happens? Those who are more powerful, they will win in a bargain. So that should not be there. Instead, he said every discussion, every debate, everything should be directed towards national development. So it should be national commitment should be supreme. That is what he said. Then the Tobanji's very important contribution is he has discussed the concept of development. He has discussed about GDP, the concept of GDP. GDP is based on the amount of consumption. It is about what a thing can fetch a value in the market. It is based on that GDP is calculated. So he has mentioned if narcotics drugs are produced and it is sold secretly, that also will come up as a part of GDP. Then he says about trees. When trees are standing in the forest, they have absolutely no value. They don't contribute to the GDP. Once the forest is destroyed and all the trees are cut and they are brought to the market, when it's sold in the market, it increases the GDP of the country. That means the increase of GDP, that will have a destructive effect of environment, or by destructive effect on the environment, a country's GDP can be raised. So he said it is against the concept of Indian ethos. We believe in minimizing our consumption, but the GDP says maximize your consumption. This is like this. So on that context, he quotes the theory of Dr. J.K. Mehta, the theory of wantlessness. He is quoting. He is also referring to Ivan Illich, a famous writer, thinker. Ivan Illich has written about the concept of development in the Mexican context. His experience in the Mexican context, he has said that development is an erosion of means of subsistence. It destroys traditional skills. There is loss of self-reliance and dignity. The solidarity of the communities is lost. There is a spoliation of nature. There is displacement from traditional environments. There is unemployment. It increases unemployment, bulldozing self-reliant communities into cash economy. And there is cultural rootlessness, and corruption will increase in the politics. These are the contributions of this type of this concept of GDP. That is our concept. We doesn't say that you should not consume anything. A reasonable, a balanced consumption is required for everyone. So for that purpose, the interest of the consumer should be protected. In that context, he rejects the Western concept. Buyer beware. That concept is rejected. He says the Vedic dictum is seller should be beware. That is the dictum. That should be here. That is what he has written in his book, Consumer the Sovereign. He also said everything should be modernized. But modernization doesn't mean westernization. He quotes Mao's famous quoting that modernization is not westernization. He said, we are ready to accept whatever good that is available in the entire world. We are in Vedic times we have said, Ano Badraha Kradavo Yendu Vishadaha. Let every good things come from all over the world. We are ready to accept it. But that those things should be adopted, adapted, and assimilated. That is what the Tobunji says. Adopted, adapted, and assimilated. It should not be imitated or just transplanted. That will not survive. That is what he says. But he also cautioned against the Western values. He says Western values are materialism, consumerism, human-centric approach, individualism, etc. So these Western values are already invaded Indian society, especially in the metropolitan society. That even in our education also these values have been included. That has created a alienated elite in India, an intellectual which is alienated from the roots. That is what he says. Regarding science, he says, India, everything had a scientific temper. We had a scientific basic for every thought. Even our language, it is shaped in a scientific way. Sanskrit is the most scientific language in the world. That is why it is used in computer also. He mentions that. But in India, it didn't conflict with the religion, it didn't conflict with spirituality. Indian spirituality is perfectly in harmony with science. We said even religion also we have shaped in a scientific way. That is why when Western religion says God is truth, Gandhiji corrected it. He said truth is God. When there are good values, that should be treated as it's a godly value. On technology, the Tobunji said that we want technology, we want appropriate technology. But technology we have to be cautious because in the hands of Arjuna, Pashupadastra was very peaceful. But when Brahmastra was in the hands of Ashwatthama, it created a genocide. He mentioned about Frankenstein. Technology can become a Frankenstein. So we have to be very careful. So he quotes, what is the solution? He quotes Alvin Toffler. There should be social control of technology. Technology should be controlled. Technology should be selective. We should select. The society should select only beneficial technology. That is there. So for that purpose, our politicians, our academicians, our educated elite, everybody should liberate themselves from the short-term horizon. Japan has been very ideal in selecting technology. Whenever they select a Western technology, they always adopt it to the Japanese conditions. This was there. So we have to link technology with culture. Regarding nature, what Deen Dayal ji has said, Mother Earth, this thing, etc. Dattobunji discussed that idea with the Cartesian paradigm. Cartesian paradigm said exploit the nation. So industrialization, GDP, Western technology, all these things are creating destruction on the nature. So we have to have a rethinking. Fortunately, in 1972, there was a World Conference on Environment in Stockholm. In that conference, Indira Gandhi ji, who was the Prime Minister then, she raised the concept of Mother Earth there. It was accepted as a catchword, and thereafter every discussions on environment, this concept of Mother Earth was raised. And United Nations was celebrating Earth Day. And later they changed that name. They have changed that name into Mother Earth Day. That is the name you find right now. So in that way, the concept of Mother Earth has now caught the imagination of the Western world. So we should tell to the world how much our Hindu society, Indian society is so eco-friendly in living. Eco-friendly, we have technology, and we treat ecology as a sacred thing. Then he criticizes the Eurocentric history. All the ideas, all the theories are created in the context of European history. That doesn't fit anywhere outside the European history. For example, dialectics, historical materialism, which are formulated by Karl Marx, it has no application outside European history. In India also, the communists tried their level best to find out the application of historical materialism in Indian history, but they failed. So he said, our concept is from sea to sea, all entire world is one, and we have to look at the entire history in a holistic perspective. That way, he said. Similarly, he said, in our educated class of our society, they have some misconception about, because they were taught in the academic circle about Shakespeare, Napoleon, Machiavelli, Hercules, etc. When you talk about Shakespeare, you should call it as Shakespeare is the Kalidasa of West, not the other way. Many people tell the other way. He said Napoleon should be a Samudragupta in the West, and Machiavelli should be called as a Kaudilya in the West. Similarly, have the usage Herculean task that should be changed. We should say Bhagirath Yatna. Similarly, while talking about politics, he said it is foolish to say that only one system of politics, one system of government is perfect for all times. When you look at Vedas and other scriptures, you will find 13 different forms of government, like Samrajyam, Vairajyam, Parameshtyam, Rajyam, Janarajyam, Viprarajyam, Samartharajyam, Adhirajyam, Swarajyam. Like that, there is description about 13 governments. The Tobanji said, you can also have new novel types of such governments in the future also. So we should not be carried by a particular type of government is only fit for ever. The concept of monarchy is peculiar to the Western politics. Every king was a monarch. But in India, till foreign invasion, the concept of monarch was not there. No king or emperor ever felt that he is a monarch, because he is always like a dasa of the people. That was the right from Rama's period. You will find that many stories where the kings they serve the people like anything. So that concept was there. Dr. Ambedkar also mentioned several times in Constituent Assembly about this peculiar feature of Indian history. So here also we considered even dharma was superior to kings. That is why most of the kings had a guru, a dharmacharya, who will guide in times of difficulties. Every Raja had such a guru, and he was the dharmacharya. And the king used to prostrate before such gurus. This you will not find in Western society. You find kings quarreling with religious heads in that Western society. Communism said there is no proletariat has no fatherland. That was their declaration. But what happened? In Russia, Lenin created a Russian model of socialism, communism. In China, it was Mao developed a Chinese model of communism. In Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh developed a Vietnam model of communism. In everywhere, that type of the nation became strong, even in a communist regime. Then Dattobhanji talks about law. India is unfortunate to have a Westminster model of legal framework. We have an Anglo-Saxon legal framework working in the country. So in that framework, there are several strange ideas, but we have to bear with. The judge should not go too much to inquire about the justice, truth. That will cast upon a doubt about the judge himself. So it is a accusatory system. That is the British system we have adopted in modern India. But in ancient India, our Hindu jurisprudence was based on inquisitive type of legal system. So there he says the Western society believed in might is right, but Indian society always believed right is might. That was a concept. So Satyameva Jayade, every time truth will triumph. So in Kaudilya especially says, the best people are to lead the rest. That is what in beautiful words the Tobanji describes the Kaudilya's words. So in Constituent Assembly, when the Constitution was drafted and present before the uh, uh, Parliament, the last speech of Dr. Ambedkar, in that speech, he said, the success of this constitution depends on the moral sense of the people, the dharmic sense of the people. It depends. Constitution on its own cannot succeed. But unfortunately, the dharma-based principles did not find a place in our constitution. It became a right-based. Only in the directive principles you will find these things. Then regarding change also, he always welcomed change. Change is life. Without change, a society cannot survive. So he mentioned that a tree grows and new leaves will sprout, old leaves will fall down. This is natural. That has to change. So there should be yuga anukul change everywhere. So every yuga, a new types of dharma will come up. That is yuga dharma that will come up. That will be the same Sanatana dharma will manifest in new forms. But what should be the basis of change? Western philosophers said change should be the system. If you change the system, it will create changes in the mindset of the people. But nowhere it happened. But India said if the mindset of the people is changed, if you create a value system in the society, if a dharma based society is formed, it will change the system. If a system goes bad, this value system will change the system and a new, better system will come up. This integral vision came to Western mind during the Second World War. When Second World War, on because of many ground level needs, interdisciplinary thinking was started. But India, it is very much in our blood. Interlinking of all beings, not only human beings, all the beings in the nature is being interlinked by the same spirit. So Purusharthas, they are all interlinked. So integral vision is very much in the society. It's a wonderful world of ideology that they have created. It is fit to become an alternate to communism as well as capitalism. The only thing is that we have to be vocal. We have to stand up and tell to the whole world. This is the real paradigm that has survived for last 5,000 years. This is the only paradigm that can be a hope for the future. So for that purpose, we need to have a lot of research, because every day new challenges will arise and we have to analyze that challenge in the context of these principles. For that purpose, we have to read Dato Abunji's books. The famous book is, everybody should read Dato Abunji's book, The Third Way. Now it is available in Hindi also. So we should start from there. Then there are many other books. It's all available in a website in the name of Dato Abunji Thengudiji. All the books are PDF forms are available there. All the list is available there. So there is no difficulty in getting Dato Abunji's idea. Once we go through these books, these ideas, then you will find that it is a wonderful world, and that in that magic world you will find that all the challenges, all the issues, all the problems that the world faces now, it has an Indian solution. So in that way, we have to direct our research. With these words, I conclude. I once again thank the university organizers, the vice chancellor, the chair, and organizing secretary for inviting me for this program. Thank you.